Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the broken communication device on his workbench. The small repair shop on Kepler Station was hot and cramped, filled with spare parts and tools from a dozen different worlds. He had been working on the alien device for 3 hours, but the strange blue crystals inside, it still refused to work properly. Kepler Station sat on the edge of human space, where traders from many different planets came to do business. Jake had opened his repair shop here 5 years ago after leaving the Earth Navy. He was good at fixing things, and aliens paid well for someone who could repair their technology without asking too many questions. The front door chimed as someone entered the shop. Jake looked up and nearly dropped his tools. A huge creature stood in the doorway, so tall it had to duck to fit inside. Its body was covered in black scales that seemed to absorb the light, and its eyes glowed like red coals. In the darkness, Jake had seen many aliens during his time on the station, but never anything like this. The creature looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, except it walked on 2 legs and wore a torn leather coat. Most frightening of all was the broken device covering its eyes, sparking and smoking with each step it took. "You fix things," the creature said in a deep voice that made the walls vibrate. It was not a question. Jake swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, I do repairs. What seems to be the problem?" The dragon-like being carefully removed the device from its face. Jake could see that its eyes were clouded and white, clearly blind. The creature held out the broken visor with surprisingly gentle claws. "This is my sight," it said. "Without it, I see nothing. Many have tried to fix it. All have failed. You are my last hope." Jake took the device carefully. It was heavier than it looked, made from materials he did not recognize. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its edges, and he could feel it humming with power, even though it was clearly broken. "What's your name?" Jake asked as he examined the visor. "I am Korath," the creature replied. "I am of the Draconian people, though I have been far from home for many years." Jake had heard of the Draconians before. They were an old and powerful race that controlled large parts of the galaxy. Most humans had never seen one, as they rarely left their own territory. What was one doing here on a small trading station? How long has it been broken? Jake asked, setting the visor on his workbench under a bright light. 20 years, Korath said sadly. "I lost my natural sight in a battle long ago. This device was made to replace what I lost, but it was damaged when I escaped my enemies. Since then, I have lived in darkness." Jake studied the visor more closely. The technology was far beyond anything humans had created. It seemed to work by connecting directly to the user's brain, translating visual information in ways that human science could barely understand. The materials were strange too, some kind of crystal and metal combination that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "I've never seen anything like this," Jake admitted. "What makes you think I can fix it when others couldn't?" Korath was quiet for a long moment. "You are human," he said finally. "Your people have a reputation for solving problems in ways others cannot imagine. You see solutions where others see only obstacles." Jake spent the next hour taking the visor apart piece by piece. Each component was more complex than the last, built with precision that made Earth's best technology look like children's toys. As he worked, Korath told him stories of the Draconian Empire, of vast fleets and ancient battles among the stars. "Why are you so far from home?" Jake asked as he examined a particularly strange crystal component. Korath's claws clicked nervously on the metal floor. "That is a long story," he said. "Perhaps one day I will tell you all in it. For now, know that I cannot return to my people while I remain blind. They would see it as weakness." Jake worked through the night, taking breaks only to eat and rest. His eyes. The visor was incredibly complex, but as he studied it, he began to understand how it worked. The basic principles were similar to human electronics, just far more advanced, but the problem was not as complicated as it first appeared. 1. Small component deep inside the device had failed, causing everything else to stop working properly. Jake had seen similar failures in human equipment, though never on this scale. The challenge was finding a replacement part. The failed component was made from materials that did not exist anywhere in human space. Jake would have to improvise, using parts from other devices to create something that could do the same job. He worked for 2 more days, barely sleeping. Korath waited patiently, sometimes helping by holding tools or explaining how the device was supposed to work. Jake found himself enjoying the dragon's company. Despite his frightening appearance, Korath was intelligent and kind. Finally, Jake thought he had a solution. Using parts from 3 different alien devices and some human electronics, he had created a hybrid component that might work. It was not elegant, but it should restore the visor's basic functions. This might hurt. Jake warned as he prepared to test the repaired device. Korath nodded. I have lived with pain for 20 years. A little more will not kill me. Jake activated the visor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to glow, its symbols lighting up in sequence. Korath gasped and stumbled backward. Can you see? Jake asked anxiously. Korath turned toward him, and Jake saw that the dragon's eyes were no longer clouded. They burned with inner fire, ancient and intelligent. I can see, Korath whispered. By all the stars, I can see again. The dragon warrior fell to his knees, tears streaming down his scaled face. Jake had never seen anything so moving. He had given this proud creature back something precious that had been lost for 20 years. How can I repay you? Korath asked, his voice shaking with emotion. Jake shrugged, embarrassed by the dragon's gratitude. Just knowing I could help is enough. That's what I do. I fix things. But as Korath stood and looked at him with those burning eyes, Jake realized that this simple repair job might have changed both their lives forever. Korath stood in Jake's repair shop, testing his restored vision by looking at everything around him. He picked up tools and examined them closely, as if seeing them for the first time. His eyes glowed brighter with each passing moment. This is a miracle, Korath said, his deep voice filled with wonder. I had forgotten how beautiful the universe could be. Jake watched the dragon warrior explore his small shop with the enthusiasm of a child. It was hard to believe this gentle creature was a member of the feared draconian empire. But as Korath moved, Jake could see the deadly grace in every step, the way his claws instinctively found perfect balance for combat. You said you were far from home, Jake said. What brought you all the way out here? Korath's expression grew serious. He moved to the window and looked out at the stars beyond Kepler Station. I must tell you something, Jake Morrison. What you have done today is more important than you know. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something in Korath's tone warned him that his simple life was about to become very complicated. 20 years ago, I was not just another draconian warrior, Korath began. I was heir to the dragon throne, next in line to rule the greatest empire in the galaxy. Jake nearly choked on his coffee. You're a prince? I was, Korath said sadly. My younger brother Vextar was always jealous of my position. He was brilliant and ruthless, but he was born second. In our culture, that meant he would always serve, never rule. Korath touched the repaired visor gently. Vextar spent years building support among the military commanders who cared more about power than honor. He promised them new worlds to conquer, new species to enslave. When he was ready, he struck. A coup, Jake said, understanding now. Yes, he moved while I was visiting the outer colonies, inspecting our defenses. His supporters seized the capital and declared me a traitor. They said I was too weak to lead, too willing to make peace with lesser species. Jake thought about the way Korath had spoken to him, with respect and kindness. It was clear the dragon did not see humans as lesser beings. I barely escaped with my life, Korath continued. My loyal guards died protecting me as we fled. Vexstar ships hunted us across 3 star systems. In the final battle, their quantum weapons damaged my ship and destroyed my eyes. That's when you lost your sight, Jake said. Korath nodded. I crashed on a dead world and thought I would die there. But smugglers found me and took me to safety. I have spent 20 years in exile, blind and powerless, while my brother rules in my place. Jake tried to imagine what that must have been like, to go from being heir to an empire to being a refugee in a single day. Why didn't you try to get help? Surely some of your people remained loyal. Without my sight, I was seen as broken, Korath explained. Draconian culture values strength above all else. A blind emperor would be considered weak, unfit to rule. My supporters gradually gave up hope or switched sides to save themselves. The dragon warrior turned back to face Jake, his eyes burning with new determination. But now everything has changed. There is an old prophecy among my people. It speaks of a time when the rightful heir will see again through the kindness of lesser beings and reclaim what was stolen. Jake felt his heart racing. You think I'm part of some prophecy? I think you have given me back more than my sight, Korath said. You have given me hope, and perhaps the chance to save both our peoples. What do you mean? Korath's expression grew dark. My brother has not been idle during his reign. He has built the largest war fleet in Draconian history. Intelligence reports suggest he is planning a massive invasion of human space within the next year. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Humanity had been at peace for decades, focused on exploration and trade rather than war. They were not prepared for an attack by one of the galaxy's major powers. How do you know this? Jake asked. I still have contacts throughout the Empire, Korath said. Servants and soldiers who remember the old ways. They send me information when they can. Vexstar believes humans are weak and divided, easy prey for his fleets. Are we? Jake asked, though he feared the answer. Individually, humans are not as strong as Draconians, Korath admitted. But you have something my brother does not understand. You work together in ways that other species cannot. You find solutions to impossible problems. You never give up. Jake thought about the repair he had just completed. 3 other technicians had declared the visor impossible to fix, but he had found a way. Maybe Korath was right about humans. What can we do? Jake asked. Even if you could challenge your brother, you're just one dragon against an entire empire. Korath smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Not as alone as you might think. Many Draconians are unhappy with Vexstar's rule. He has abandoned our ancient traditions in favor of conquest and cruelty. There are those who would support the rightful heir, if they believed he could win. But they need to see that you're not broken anymore, Jake realized. Exactly. Your repair of my visor proves that I am blessed, that the old prophecies are coming true. But I need more than just working eyes. I need allies. Jake was about to ask what kind of allies when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as the station's automated voice announced a code yellow situation. Unknown vessels approaching, the voice said. All personnel prepare for possible hostile contact. Korath's newly repaired eyes went wide with fear. He rushed to Jake's communication console and began scanning the sensor readings. What he saw made him curse in the ancient Draconian language. What is it? Jake demanded. 4 ships, Korath said grimly. Draconian battlecruisers, each one capable of destroying this entire station. Jake felt his knees go weak. Your brother found you. It appears so. Korath began pacing like a caged animal. But how? I have been so careful to avoid detection. Jake thought about the repair work they had done over the past 3 days. The visor. When we tested it, did it send out any kind of signal? Korath stopped pacing. Of course. The device automatically connects to draconian networks when it activates. I was so happy to see again. I did not think about the security implications. So they tracked the signal here, Jake said. Yes, and now they are coming to finish what they started 20 years ago. Through the shop's window, Jake could see other beings on the station, pointing at the sky. 4 massive ships were approaching, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Even at this distance, they looked like harbingers of death. We have to run, Jake said. Get you off the station before they arrive. Korath shook his head. It is too late. Those are hunter-killer cruisers, the fastest ships in the Draconian fleet. They will be here within the hour. Then what do we do? Korath looked at Jake with his burning eyes. We do what your people do best. We find a solution where others see only death. The dragon warrior moved to Jake's communication array and began working with newfound urgency. Help me send a message, Jake Morrison. It is time the galaxy learned that the rightful emperor of the Draconians still lives. Jake moved to help, though he wondered if they were already too late. Outside, the 4 battlecruisers grew larger with each passing minute, bringing death and destruction with them. But as he looked at Korath, working frantically at the controls, Jake felt a strange sense of hope. The dragon was right about one thing. Humans never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The 4 draconian battlecruisers dropped out of hyperspace like falling stars, their massive hulls blocking out the light from nearby suns. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long, covered in armor plating that could withstand planetary bombardment. Weapon ports lined their sides like the eyes of hungry predators. Station Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the control center, watching the sensor readings with growing dread. She had served in the Earth Navy for 15 years before taking this job, but she had never seen ships this large or this heavily armed. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel, reported Lieutenant Ben Clark, the station's communications officer. Put it on screen, Lisa ordered, trying to keep her voice steady. The main display flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Draconian flagship. A tall dragon warrior in elaborate armor stood before the camera, his scales a deep green color that seemed to shift in the light. His eyes burned with cold fire, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute power. I am General Malthorn of the Draconian Imperial Fleet, he announced. This station harbors a traitor, an exile known as Korath. You will surrender him immediately, or face the consequences. Lisa glanced at her staff. Everyone looked terrified, which was understandable. The station's defenses consisted of a few old plasma cannons that would barely scratch the paint on those monster ships. This is Commander Hayes, she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Kepler Station is neutral territory. We don't get involved in other species' politics. General Malthorn's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. Neutrality is a luxury you can no longer afford, human. You have 1 hour to produce the exile, or we will take him by force. The transmission ended, leaving the control center in uncomfortable silence. Lisa knew she had to make an impossible choice. Nearly 50,000 beings lived and worked on Kepler Station, representing dozens of different species. She could not let them all die to protect one dragon, but she also knew that surrendering Korath might not save them. The Draconians had a reputation for solving problems permanently, and witnesses were often seen as problems. Get me Jake Morrison, she ordered. If anyone knows what's really going on, it's him. Jake arrived at the control center 20 minutes later, with Korath following close behind. The Dragon Warrior moved with new confidence, now that his sight was restored, but Jake could see the worry in his glowing eyes. "Commander Hayes," Jake said as he entered, "I guess you've met our visitors." "Your dragon friend has put us all in danger," Lisa said bluntly. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't hand him over right now." Korath stepped forward before Jake could answer. "Because surrendering me will not save this station, Commander. My brother has ordered that all witnesses to my survival must be eliminated." "Your brother?" Lisa asked, confused. "Emperor Vextar of the Draconian Empire," Korath explained. "The one who stole my throne and has spent 20 years hunting me across the galaxy." Lisa felt her heart sink. This was not just about catching a fugitive. This was about dynastic politics on a scale that could reshape the galaxy. "Even if I wanted to fight," she said, "we don't stand a chance against those ships. Our weapons are older than my grandmother." Jake moved to the communications console. "Maybe we don't have to fight them alone." "What are you doing?" Lisa demanded. "Something crazy," Jake admitted as he began working on the station's transmitter array. "Help me boost the signal strength. We need to reach every human ship within 100 light years." Korath understood immediately. "You want to call for help." "Not just help," Jake said as he worked. "I want to tell everyone the truth about what's happening here." Within minutes, Jake had rigged the station's communications to broadcast on every frequency used by human ships. His message went out across space, reaching cargo haulers, passenger transports, research vessels, and private yachts. "This is Jake Morrison on Kepler Station," he broadcast. "We are under threat from 4 Draconian battlecruisers. But this isn't just about us. The rightful Emperor of the Draconians is here, and he has information about a planned invasion of human space." Jake quickly explained Korath's true identity and the threat posed by Vextar's war fleet. He told everyone who would listen that this was their chance to prevent a war that could destroy human civilization. "I know most of you are just traders and travelers," Jake continued. "But right now, you're all we've got. If you care about human freedom, if you care about stopping a war before it starts, then come to Kepler Station. Help us protect the one dragon who can save us all." The first ship to respond was the Carolina's Dream, a cargo hauler captained by Pete Collins. Jake knew Pete from previous visits to the station. He was a tough old spacer who had been flying the trade routes for 30 years. "Jake, you crazy fool," Pete's voice crackled over the radio. "I'm 3 hours out, but I'm coming. Nobody threatens a station while Pete Collins can still fly." More responses came in quickly. Captain Amy Rodriguez on the research vessel Nova's Edge announced she was changing course to help. Steve Parker, who hauled freight on the Big Betty, said he would arrive within 4 hours dot within 2 hours of Jake's broadcast. Over 50 human ships had responded. They were not warships, just ordinary vessels, crewed by ordinary people who refused to run when their neighbors were in danger. General Malthorn seemed surprised by the human response. His ships maintained their positions around the station, but he made no move to attack. Lisa realized that the political situation had changed dramatically. "He can't just destroy the station now," she said to Jake and Korath. "Not with all these witnesses and a whole human fleet watching." Vextar's invasion plans depended on surprise, Korath agreed. "Open war with humanity would unite your species against us and warn other civilizations about draconian expansion." But Jake was not satisfied with just creating a standoff. Using his knowledge of alien technology and some equipment from his repair shop, he began trying to establish communications with potential allies within the draconian military. "There have to be others who remained loyal to you," he said to Korath. "People who would support the rightful emperor if they knew you were alive." Korath provided access codes and frequency information from his years as heir to the throne. Jake used this data to send carefully encrypted messages throughout Draconian space, announcing that Korath lived and had regained his sight. The response was not immediate, but it was significant. Admiral Kesvara, commander of the 3rd Draconian Fleet, sent a coded reply expressing her continued loyalty to the rightful emperor. Other messages followed from military commanders, planetary governors, and noble houses that had supported Korath's rule. For the first time in 20 years, the exiled prince had hope of real support from his own people. General Malthorn seemed to sense that the situation was slipping out of his control. His ships began moving into attack positions, their weapons charging with deadly energy. "Commander Hayes," he transmitted to the station, "you have interfered in Draconian internal affairs for the last time. Prepare to face the consequences of your actions." Lisa looked at the tactical display showing the 4 massive battlecruisers surrounding her station. Even with the human ships that had arrived to help, they were still vastly outgunned. "Any brilliant ideas?" she asked. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking hard. Then his face lit up with inspiration. "Actually, yes. But it's going to require trusting Korath completely." "What do you have in mind?" Korath asked. "A trial by combat," Jake said. "It's an ancient Draconian tradition, right? If you can prove your right to rule through single combat, even Vextar can't argue with the results." Korath's eyes blazed with sudden hope. "Yes, it could work. But the combat would have to be witnessed by representatives of many species, broadcast across the galaxy." "We can do that," Lisa said, understanding the plan. "Kepler Station has beings from dozens of worlds. Perfect witnesses. General Malthorn would have to agree to the trial, or risk looking weak before his own troops. And if Korath won, he would have legitimate claim to challenge his brother's rule. Doubt it was a dangerous gamble, but it might be their only chance to prevent a massacre and stop a galactic war before it could begin." The space around Kepler Station had become a gathering point for the largest collection of human ships anyone had ever seen in one place. Over 200 vessels of all sizes floated in formation around the trading post, from massive cargo haulers to tiny personal transports. None were built for war, but their crews were determined to stand together against the Draconian threat. Captain Pete Collins piloted his cargo ship Carolina's Dream closer to the station, marveling at the sight. In 30 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like it. Ordinary people who had never fired a shot in anger were willing to face 4 battlecruisers to protect their neighbors. "This is what makes us human," he said to his crew. "We don't run when things get tough." On the station, Jake worked frantically to establish secure communications with Admiral Kesvara and other Draconian commanders who had declared their loyalty to Korath. The political situation was changing by the hour as news of the rightful emperor's survival spread throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Kesvara has agreed to serve as witness for the trial by combat," Jake reported to Commander Hayes. "She's bringing 3 fleet carriers and their escort ships." Lisa shook her head in amazement. "A week ago, the biggest excitement we had was a broken recycling system. Now we're hosting what might be the most important political event in galactic history." Korath stood at the observation deck, looking out at the human ships that had come to his aid. He was still adjusting to having his sight back, and the view filled him with emotion. "I do not understand your people," he said to Jake. "These captains risk everything to help someone they barely know. In Draconian culture, such loyalty must be earned through years of service." "That's where you're wrong," Jake replied. "You earned their loyalty the moment you chose to warn us about the invasion. They're not fighting for you personally. They're fighting for the idea that good people should help each other, no matter what species they belong to." General Malthorn had remained silent for several hours, clearly struggling with the unexpected turn of events. His mission had been simple: capture or kill the exile Korath. Now he faced a complex political situation that could affect the entire empire. Finally, he sent the transmission to the station. I will agree to trial by combat, as is our ancient right. But I choose the champion who will fight for Emperor Vextars. Claim. The main screen showed Malthorn's bridge, where a truly massive draconian warrior stood beside the general. This creature was even larger than Korath, with scales that looked like black metal and arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Genetic modifications had enhanced his natural strength to inhuman levels. This is Commander Rozek, Malthorn announced. He has never been defeated in combat. If the exile wishes to claim the throne, he must face our greatest warrior. Jake felt his heart sink. Korath was skilled and experienced, but he had spent 20 years blind and in exile. How could he face a genetically enhanced super soldier? But Korath seemed unconcerned. I accept the challenge, he said calmly. When and where will this combat take place? The station's main cargo bay, Lisa suggested. It's large enough, and we can broadcast the entire event across the galaxy. Jake pulled Korath aside as preparations began for the trial. Are you sure about this? That Rozek looks like he could tear apart a battleship with his bare hands. Korath smiled, his restored eyes glowing with confidence. You forget, my friend. I have spent 20 years learning to fight without sight. I developed senses and instincts that normal warriors cannot match. Now, with my vision restored, I am stronger than I have ever been. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the cargo bay to witness the combat. Camera drones were positioned to record every moment for broadcast throughout the galaxy. Even the draconian ships sent observers to ensure the trial was conducted properly. Admiral Kesvara arrived with her fleet just as the preparations were complete. She was an elderly dragon with silver scales and wise eyes, clearly a veteran of many battles. When she saw Korath, tears streamed down her face. My prince, she said, kneeling before him. I feared you were dead. It fills my heart to see you whole again. Rise, old friend, Korath said gently. You have remained loyal when others gave up hope. That loyalty will not be forgotten. The trial by combat was scheduled to begin at station time 1800 hours. As the moment approached, Jake found himself more nervous than he had ever been in his life. Everything depended on the next few minutes. The cargo bay had been cleared of equipment, creating an arena roughly 50 meters square. Spectators filled the observation galleries, while camera drones captured every angle. The broadcast was being transmitted across human space and deep into draconian territory. Korath entered the arena wearing traditional combat armor, his claws extended and ready for battle. Rozek appeared from the opposite side, moving with the other side, moving with the deadly grace of a perfect killing machine. The size difference was dramatic, with Rozek standing nearly a full meter taller than his opponent. Admiral Kesvara served as the official witness, reciting the ancient words that made the trial legally binding. Let combat decide the rightful ruler, she declared. May the strongest and most worthy claim victory. The two dragons circled each other slowly, testing for weaknesses. Rozek attacked first, his massive claws swinging in deadly arcs that would have split a normal being in half. But Korath was not where the claws struck. He moved like liquid shadow, dodging attacks that seemed impossible to avoid. Jake realized what was happening. Korath had spent 20 years developing his other senses to compensate for blindness. He could hear the slight whistle of air displaced by Rozek's claws, smell the change in his opponent's scent that indicated an attack was coming. Now, with perfect vision added to these enhanced abilities, he was nearly untouchable. Rozek grew frustrated as his attacks repeatedly missed their target. He began using more aggressive tactics, trying to corner Korath against the walls of the arena. But every time he thought he had trapped his opponent, Korath would slip away with movements that seemed to defy physics. The battle lasted 20 minutes, though it felt like hours to Jake. Gradually, Razak began to tire. His enhanced muscles consumed enormous amounts of energy, and the constant failed attacks were wearing him down. Korath, meanwhile, seemed to grow stronger as the fight continued. The end came suddenly. Razak lunged forward in a desperate final attack, putting all his remaining strength into a strike that would have crushed stone. Korath sidestepped at the last instant and struck back with precision that took Jake's breath away. Razak collapsed to the deck, alive but clearly defeated. Korath stood over him, not even breathing hard from the exertion. The cargo bay erupted in cheers from the human spectators. Admiral Kesvara stepped forward to make the official declaration. "Victory belongs to Korath, rightful emperor of the Draconian people," she announced. "Let all who witness this know that the true ruler has returned." General Malthorn's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim but resigned. "The trial has been observed and recorded. I acknowledge the result, though Emperor Vextar may not be so willing to accept it." "He will have no choice," Admiral Kesvara replied. "Ancient law binds us all, even usurpers." Jake watched as Korath was crowned emperor in an impromptu ceremony, using a simple metal band that Admiral Kesvara had brought for the occasion. It was not the elaborate golden crown of the Draconian throne, but it would serve until the rightful ruler could return home. One of Emperor Korath's first official acts was to sign a mutual defense treaty with humanity, represented by Commander Hayes on behalf of the local colonial government. The document established formal diplomatic relations and promised military cooperation against common threats. "Your people stood with me when I had nothing," Korath said to Jake during the signing ceremony. "That loyalty will be remembered for all time." General Malthorn surprised everyone by requesting permission to join Korath's growing fleet. "I have served the Empire faithfully," he said, "but I see now that I have been serving the wrong emperor." Jake found himself appointed as the first human Draconian technology liaison, a position that came with diplomatic immunity and a substantial salary. His small repair shop would become the center of a new era of cooperation between species. As the celebration continued around them, Jake and Korath stood together at the observation deck, watching the mixed fleet of human and Draconian ships. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we go home," Korath replied. "It is time to reclaim my throne and end my brother's reign of terror." Jake nodded, though he knew the real challenge was just beginning. They had won an important battle, but the war for the soul of the Draconian Empire had yet to be fought. The journey to the Draconian homeworld took 3 weeks, with the growing fleet stopping at several systems to gather more supporters. Word of Korath's victory and trial by combat had spread throughout the galaxy, and many who had remained silent during his exile now declared their loyalty to the rightful emperor. Jake traveled aboard Admiral Kesvara's flagship, the Eternal Flame, working with Draconian engineers to establish communication networks between human and dragon ships. The technology exchange was fascinating, with each species learning from the other's innovations. "Your people have a gift for making incompatible systems work together," Admiral Kesvara observed as Jake helped integrate human sensors with Draconian targeting computers. "It is a valuable skill in both technology and politics." Jake looked out at the fleet surrounding them. Nearly 100 ships now followed Emperor Korath, including vessels from a dozen different species. The humans had insisted on sending a representative force led by Captain Pete Collins in his upgraded cargo hauler. "I never thought I'd see humans and dragons fighting side by side," Jake said. A month ago, most people had never even met a Draconian. The fleet's destination was Draconis Prime, the ancient capital world of the Empire. Intelligence reports indicated that Emperor Vextar had fortified the system heavily, with defensive stations and patrol fleets guarding every approach route. "He knows we are coming," Korath said during a strategy meeting aboard the flagship. "My brother is many things, but he is not stupid. He will have prepared for this confrontation." "What kind of defenses are we looking at?" asked Captain Collins, who had been given command of the human contingent despite having no military training. Admiral Kesvara activated a holographic display showing the Draconis system. "Orbital defense platforms here, and here," she sighed, pointing to positions around the capital world, each one capable of destroying a battleship with a single shot, plus at least 50 patrol vessels and the Imperial Guard fleet. Jake studied the tactical display with growing concern. Even with their expanded fleet, they were still outnumbered 3-1. Is there any way to avoid a direct assault? "There might be," Korath said thoughtfully. "The ancient capital has ceremonial chambers that have been used for coronations for thousands of years. If I can reach the throne of stars and make my claim in the traditional manner, many of Vextar's supporters might abandon him. How do we get you there alive?" Jake asked. Admiral Kesvara smiled grimly, very carefully, and with a great deal of luck. The plan they developed was risky, but clever. The main fleet would engage Vextar's forces in open battle, drawing attention away from the capital. Meanwhile, a small strike team would use stealth technology to slip past the defenses and land near the Imperial Palace. Jake insisted on being part of the strike team, despite having no combat training. "You're going to need someone who understands both human and draconian technology," he argued. "Plus, I started this whole thing when I fixed your visor. I want to see how it ends." The battle for Draconis Prime began at dawn, station time. Vextar's defense fleet moved to intercept the approaching vessels, their weapons blazing across the darkness of space. Admiral Kesvara commanded the Loyalist forces with skill born from decades of experience, but the enemy had superior numbers and defensive positions. Captain Collins surprised everyone by proving to be an excellent tactical commander. His cargo hauler and the other human ships used their smaller size and maneuverability to harass the enemy flanks, drawing fire away from the larger draconian vessels. "These humans fight like they have nothing to lose," Admiral Kesvara observed, as she watched Collins' ship dart between two enemy cruisers, somehow avoiding destruction. "They fight for something they believe in," Korath replied. "That makes them very dangerous." While the space battle raged above, the strike team landed on Draconis Prime using a captured enemy shuttle. The planet's surface was a mixture of ancient architecture and modern technology, with towering spires that reached toward the stars. Jake followed Korath and his guard through the winding streets of the capital city. The civilian population seemed confused by the sudden appearance of the exiled prince, many recognizing him despite his 20-year absence. "The rightful emperor has returned," some whispered as they passed. "The prophecies are being fulfilled." The Imperial Palace was a massive structure carved from a single enormous crystal, its walls glowing with inner light. Guards loyal to Vextar tried to stop them at the gates, but many laid down their weapons when they saw Korath approaching. "I will not fight my true emperor," declared one guard captain, kneeling as Korath passed. The throne room was at the heart of the palace, a vast chamber dominated by the throne of stars itself. The ancient seat of power was carved from meteoric stone and embedded with crystals that supposedly came from the first draconian homeworld. Emperor Vextar waited for them there, surrounded by his most loyal supporters. He was smaller than his brother, but radiated an aura of cold intelligence and ruthless ambition. When he saw Korath enter, his eyes blazed with fury. "So, the dead have risen," Vextar said mockingly. "I should have made sure of your death 20 years ago." You should have, Korath agreed. But you always were too confident for your own good. The confrontation that followed was not just between two brothers, but between two different visions of what the Draconian Empire should become. Vextar spoke of conquest and dominion, of spreading draconian rule across the galaxy through force. Korath offered a different path, one of cooperation and mutual respect between species. Strength does not come from crushing others, he said. It comes from lifting them up alongside us. Jake watched the debate with fascination, realizing he was witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. The choice between these two philosophies would determine the fate of billions of beings. Across hundreds of worlds, the turning point came when news arrived that Admiral Kesvara's fleet was winning the space battle. Many of Vextar's ships had switched sides when they learned their rightful emperor was alive and present on the homeworld. Seeing his support crumbling, Vextar made a desperate final play. He challenged Korath to single combat for the throne, invoking the same ancient law that had served them well at Kepler Station. You are always the better warrior, Vextar admitted as they prepared to fight. But 20 years of exile have made you weak. I am stronger now than I ever was. The battle between the brothers was fierce but brief. Vextar fought with deadly skill and ruthless determination, but Korath had advantages his brother could not match. His restored sight, combined with the combat instincts developed during his years of blindness, made him nearly unstoppable. When Vextar fell, defeated but alive, Korath showed the mercy that had always distinguished him from his brother. You will live, he declared, but your days of ruling through fear are over. Jake watched as Korath took his place on the throne of stars, accepting the loyalty of nobles and military commanders who had served his brother. The transition of power was remarkably smooth, with most of the Empire's leadership quickly acknowledging the rightful emperor's return. One of Korath's first acts as restored emperor was to formalize the alliance with humanity, establishing trade agreements and mutual defense pacts that would benefit both species for generations to come. Your people saved my empire from becoming something monstrous, Korath told Jake during the coronation ceremony. That debt can never be fully repaid. Jake found himself appointed as the first human ambassador to the Draconian Empire, a position that came with a magnificent residence in the capital and responsibilities he never could have imagined. But despite all the honors and titles, what Jake treasured most was the simple friendship he had formed with the Dragon Emperor. They would spend hours together, working on various technological projects and discussing the future of galactic civilization. 6 months after the restoration, Jake received word that another impossible repair job was waiting for him back on Kepler Station. A Centaurian navigator had brought in a quantum compass that 3 different engineers had declared beyond salvation. Go, Korath encouraged him when Jake expressed interest in taking on the challenge. You are a fixer of broken things, and the galaxy always has need of such people. Jake returned to his old repair shop, which had been expanded and modernized, but still retained its familiar character. As he examined the broken Centaurian device, he felt the same determination that had driven him to repair Korath's visor. The shop's door chimed as someone entered. Jake looked up to see a small, furry creature with large eyes and 6 arms, clearly distressed about something. You fix things? The alien asked hopefully. Jake smiled and set down his tools. Yes, I do repairs. What seems to be the problem? Outside the shop's window, 4 massive draconian battlecruisers maintained their positions around Kepler Station. But now they served as protectors rather than threats, their crews sworn to defend the place where an exile had become an emperor. Through the simple kindness of a human who refused to accept that anything was truly unfixable. The galaxy was full of broken things waiting to be repaired, and Jake Morrison was ready to face whatever impossible challenge came through his door next. After all, Someone had once told him that fixing the impossible was what humans did best.